The screaming started before Daniel Crawford even saw the protesters. Murder. Child killer. How do you sleep at night? But if you're enjoying this story, don't forget to smash that subscribe button for more. Also, share your thoughts and let me know where you're watching from. Tomorrow's story is going to be just as epic, so don't miss out. Now, let's continue. The chance hit his black Maybach like physical blows as it crawled through the crowd outside Crawford Industries' downtown headquarters. Daniel, 42, sat rigid in the back seat, his steel blue eyes cold as winter frost, jaw clenched so tight it could crack diamonds. At 6 feet 3 inches with perfectly styled dark hair touched with silver at the temples, his athletic frame was wrapped in a $5,000 Italian suit that couldn't hide the exhaustion eating him alive. "Sir, should we find another route?" his driver asked nervously, watching angry faces press against the bulletproof windows. "Drive through them," Daniel's voice was ice. "I don't negotiate with terrorists." But these weren't terrorists. These were parents. Families. People whose lives had been shattered by the chemical plant explosion 3 months ago, the explosion that had killed 17 people, including 8 children, and had been traced back to Crawford Industries' cost-cutting measures. Daniel's phone buzzed incessantly with calls from lawyers, board members, crisis management teams. The wrongful death lawsuits were piling up. The media was circling like vultures. His stock price had tanked 40% in a week, and somewhere in this chaos, Daniel was slowly drowning. "Mr. Crawford," his assistant's voice crackled through the intercom, "the family's legal team is demanding another settlement meeting. They're threatening to go public with the internal documents that—" "I don't care," Daniel cut her off, his voice sharp enough to draw blood. "Let them try. They'll never prove negligence. Our lawyers will bury them in paperwork until they give up and take whatever scraps we offer." The words tasted like poison in his mouth, but Daniel Crawford hadn't built a billion-dollar empire by showing weakness. Emotions were liabilities. Guilt was a luxury he couldn't afford. The car finally broke free of the protesters and pulled into the secure underground garage. Daniel was already reaching for his briefcase when something made him freeze. There was someone else in his car. The little girl sat in the corner of the back seat as far from him as possible, her small body pressed against the door like she was ready to bolt. She couldn't have been more than 9 years old, with beautiful dark skin that seemed to glow in the car's dim lighting and thick, curly hair pulled back with a bright yellow ribbon that had seen better days. Her simple white dress was clean but obviously secondhand, and her brown eyes. Those eyes held a fury that made Daniel's blood run cold. "What the hell?" Daniel started, his hand moving toward the emergency button. "Don't." The girl's voice cut through the space between them like a blade. "Don't you dare call security. Don't you dare try to get rid of me like you got rid of my brother." Daniel's hand froze. "Your brother?" The girl's small hands clenched into fists in her lap, and when she spoke again, her voice trembled with barely contained rage. "Marcus Williams. He was 6 years old. He liked to draw pictures of dinosaurs, and he always shared his cookies at lunch, and he wanted to be a firefighter when he grew up." The name hit Daniel like a physical blow. Marcus Williams. Victim number 4 on the casualty list. The file he'd read exactly once before burying it under other paperwork. "He died because of you," the girl continued, her young voice carrying a weight that no child should bear. "He died because you decided that fixing broken safety equipment was too expensive. He died because profits mattered more than people. Can you imagine facing a child whose brother died because of your decisions? What would you say to defend yourself? Drop your thoughts in the comments." Daniel's throat felt like sandpaper. "How did you get in here? Where are your parents?" dead. The word fell between them like a stone into still water. Mama died in the explosion trying to save Marcus. Daddy died 6 months later from what the doctors called a broken heart, but what I know was guilt because he couldn't protect his family. The car's climate control hummed quietly, but Daniel felt like he was suffocating. This child, this fierce, heartbroken little girl, was an orphan because of him. Because of choices he'd made, corners he'd cut, warnings he'd ignored. So now it's just me, Amara continued, her voice gaining strength. Just me and the other kids whose families you destroyed, living in foster homes and group facilities, trying to figure out how to keep breathing when everything that mattered is gone. Daniel's carefully constructed world was crumbling around him. For 3 months, he'd managed to keep the victims' abstract, faceless names on legal documents. But now one of them was sitting 3 feet away from him, very real and very much alive and very much holding him accountable. "I'm sorry," he whispered, the words feeling foreign on his tongue. Amara's eyes flashed with fury. "No, you're not. You're sorry you got caught. You're sorry it's costing you money. You're sorry the news cameras are making you look bad. But you're not sorry about Marcus or Mama or any of the other people who died because you're a greedy, heartless monster who—" "Shut up," Daniel roared, his composure finally snapping completely. "Just shut up. You think you know everything? You think life is some fairy tale where the good guys always win and the bad guys get punished? You're a child. You don't understand how the real world works." The silence that followed was deafening. Amara stared at him with those devastating brown eyes, and Daniel saw something shift in her expression. The fury was still there, but now it was mixed with something else. Something that made his chest tighten with shame, disappointment. "I hoped you'd be different," she said quietly, her voice barely above a whisper. "When I snuck into your car, when I risked everything to confront you face to face, I hoped that maybe, just maybe, you'd have a heart somewhere inside that expensive suit." She reached into her dress pocket and pulled out a crumpled piece of paper, a child's drawing in bright crayons showing a stick figure family holding hands under a rainbow. "Marcus drew this the day before he died," Amara said, her voice breaking. "It's our family. See? There's Mama, there's Daddy, there's Marcus, and there's me. We're all together and we're all happy and safe." She looked up at Daniel with tears streaming down her face, but her voice was steady as steel. "So when you tell me to shut up, Mr. Crawford, when you tell me I don't understand the real world, just remember that my real world used to have 3 other people in it. And now it's just me and this picture and the knowledge that the man responsible for taking everything away from me cares more about his stock price than about the fact that my little brother will never get to be a firefighter." Daniel felt something break inside his chest, something that had been frozen for so long he'd forgotten it existed. His heart. The drawing fluttered to the floor of the Maybach like a wounded butterfly, landing between Daniel's polished Italian leather shoes. For a moment that stretched into eternity, neither of them moved. The only sound was Amara's quiet sniffling and the distant hum of the garage's ventilation system. Daniel stared at the crayon masterpiece at his feet, this innocent child's vision of a perfect family that he had destroyed with his greed and negligence. The stick figures seemed to mock him, their simple smiles a stark contrast to the devastation he had caused. "Pick it up," Amara whispered, her voice trembling but determined. "What?" "Pick up my brother's drawing. Look at it. Really look at it." Daniel's hands shook as he bent down and carefully lifted the paper. Up close, he could see the careful detail a 6-year-old had put into his family portrait. Marcus had even drawn little hearts floating above their heads and had written, "My family," in uneven letters across the top, the misspelling somehow making it even more precious. He spent 3 hours on that picture, Amara said softly, wiping her nose with the back of her hand. Mama kept asking him to come eat dinner, but he said he couldn't stop until it was perfect. He wanted to put it on the refrigerator so everyone who visited would know how much he loved us. Daniel's throat constricted. In his billion-dollar mansion, he had a refrigerator the size of a small room, covered in stainless steel and absolutely nothing else. No family photos, no children's artwork, no evidence that anyone with a heart had ever lived there. "Tell me about him," Daniel heard himself say, the words coming out without his permission. Amara looked up sharply, suspicion flickering in her dark eyes. "Why?" "Because." Daniel struggled to find words that wouldn't sound hollow. "Because I need to know who Marcus Williams was beyond just a name on a casualty report." For a long moment, Amara studied his face as if searching for signs of deception. Finally, she seemed to find something there, some crack in his armor, that convinced her to continue. "Marcus was afraid of the dark," she began, her voice growing softer, more vulnerable. "Every night, he'd sneak into my bed and curl up next to me like a little puppy. Mama used to say we looked like 2 peas in a pod, all tangled up in my pink sheets." Despite everything, a tiny smile tugged at the corner of Amara's mouth. He had this stuffed dinosaur named Mr. Chompers that he carried everywhere. It was so old and beat up that you could barely tell what color it used to be, but Marcus loved that thing more than anything in the world. Daniel found himself leaning forward, drawn into this glimpse of a life he had cut short. "He was so smart," Amara continued, her eyes growing distant with memory. "He could already read chapter books, and he knew the names of every dinosaur that ever existed. He used to make up these elaborate stories about being a paleontologist firefighter who would rescue people and discover new fossils." A laugh bubbled up from somewhere deep inside her, surprising them both. "One time, he told our neighbor Mrs. Peterson that when he grew up, he was going to invent a fire truck that sounded like an excellent career plan. Can you imagine having such pure dreams as a child? What did you want to be when you grew up? Share your childhood dreams in the comments below." Daniel felt something wet on his cheek and realized with shock that he was crying. When was the last time he had shed tears for anyone? When was the last time he had allowed himself to feel anything beyond anger and ambition? The day of the explosion, Amara's voice grew quieter, more strained. Marcus was so excited because his class was taking a field trip to the Science Museum. He woke up at 5 in the morning and put on his favorite dinosaur shirt, the blue one with the T-Rex on the front. She paused, swallowing hard before continuing. But then Mrs. Peterson called and said she could smell something funny coming from the plant. Mama got worried and decided to walk over there to see if everything was okay. She used to work there, you know, before the layoffs last year. Daniel's stomach dropped. He remembered those layoffs, part of his efficiency restructuring that had saved the company $12 million in labor costs. Marcus begged to come with her. He said he wanted to protect Mama in case there were any bad guys around. She laughed and ruffled his hair and said her brave little man could be her bodyguard. Amara's voice broke completely now. They were holding hands when the explosion happened. The rescue workers said Marcus was trying to shield Mama with his body when they found them. The image hit Daniel like a sledgehammer. A 6-year-old boy, facing certain death, using his last moments to try to protect his mother. The same mother who had lost her job because Daniel Crawford needed to boost his profit margins. "I should have been there," Amara whispered, tears streaming down her face. I stayed home because I had a stupid test to study for. If I had gone with them, maybe I could have warned them. Maybe I could have gotten them out in time. No, Daniel said firmly, surprising himself with the strength in his voice. No, Amara. Don't you dare blame yourself for what happened. What happened to your family? That's on me. That's my fault, not yours. Amara looked up at him, her eyes wide with shock. In all the months since the explosion, no one from Crawford Industries had ever admitted fault. There had been lawyers and spokesmen and carefully worded statements about tragic accidents and unforeseen circumstances, but never an admission of responsibility, never an apology from the man who could have prevented it all. Do you mean that? She asked quietly. Daniel looked down at Marcus's drawing again, at those simple stick figures holding hands under a rainbow, and felt his entire worldview crumble and reshape itself. Yes, he said, his voice barely above a whisper. I mean it. I killed your brother. I killed your mother. I destroyed your family because I cared more about money than about human lives. The admission hung between them like a bridge, fragile but real, connecting two people who should have been enemies but were somehow becoming something else entirely. My real name isn't Amara Williams, the little girl said suddenly. Daniel looked up, confused. What? After Mama and Daddy and Marcus died, they put me in the system. Foster care. And the social worker said it might be easier for me to start fresh with a new identity. Less traumatic, she said. Amara reached into her other pocket and pulled out a small, worn birth certificate. With trembling hands, she unfolded it and held it out to Daniel. My real name is Amara Crawford, she said quietly. Marcus Crawford was my brother. My parents were Michael and Lisa Crawford. Daniel's world stopped spinning. The birth certificate fluttered in his suddenly nerveless fingers as he read the father's name listed there, Daniel Harrison Crawford. That's impossible, he breathed. Mama said you never knew about us, Amara continued, her voice steady despite the tears still flowing down her cheeks. She said she tried to tell you she was pregnant, but you were so busy building your company that you never returned her calls. And then when the twins were born, twins! Daniel's voice cracked. Marcus and me. We were twins. Mama said you probably wouldn't want anything to do with us anyway, because we just complicate your perfect life. Daniel stared at this incredible, fierce, heartbroken little girl and saw himself reflected in her dark eyes. His eyes, he realized now, saw his own stubborn chin in her defiant expression, saw the intelligence he prided himself on shining through her tears. You're my daughter, he whispered, the words feeling like a prayer and a confession all at once. I'm the daughter of the man who killed my family, Amara replied, her voice steady as steel. And now you have to decide what you're going to do about it. The choice stretched before Daniel like a chasm. He could deny it, call security, have this inconvenient truth removed from his life as efficiently as he had removed so many other obstacles, or he could finally, for the first time in his life, choose love over profit. Choose family over fortune. Choose the broken little girl sitting across from him over everything else he had ever thought mattered. Daniel Crawford, billionaire CEO, master of the universe, looked at his daughter and made the easiest decision of his life. I'm going to love you, he said simply. If you'll let me. Amara's face went from hopeful to stone cold in the span of a heartbeat. Love me? She repeated, her voice dripping with bitter disbelief. Love me? You think you can just say some pretty words and everything will be okay? She lunged forward suddenly, her small fists pounding against Daniel's chest with surprising force. You killed my brother. You killed my twin. Do you understand what that means? Daniel tried to reach for her, to calm her down, but Amara jerked away like his touch burned her. "Don't you dare touch me," she screamed, her voice echoing off the car's interior. "You don't get to kill half of my soul and then pretend you love me." The raw pain in her voice hit Daniel harder than any physical blow. This wasn't just grief, this was the agony of a twin who had lost her other half, compounded by the devastating knowledge that her own father was responsible. "Amara, please let me explain." "Explain what?" She was on her feet now, standing on the car seat, her small frame vibrating with fury. "Explain how you were too busy counting money to return Mama's phone calls? Explain how you cut safety inspections to save a few $1,000s? Explain how you knew that plant was dangerous and you let people work there anyway." Daniel's hands shook as he tried to process what she was saying. "I didn't know, liar." Amara's scream was so loud it made his ears ring. "I found the reports. I've been living in the system for months, and you know what foster kids get really good at? Finding information. Breaking into places we're not supposed to be." She reached into her dress and pulled out a crumpled manila folder, throwing it at Daniel's face. Papers scattered everywhere. Internal memos, safety reports, inspection documents, all bearing his signature, all dated months before the explosion. "I broke into your offices 3 times, Amara said, her voice deadly quiet now. "I'm small, I'm smart, and I'm invisible. Nobody pays attention to another sad foster kid hanging around office buildings." Daniel's blood ran cold as he recognized the documents. The safety violations report. The recommendation to shut down Plant 7 for immediate repairs. The memo about toxic chemical storage protocols, all marked with his handwritten note. Repairs postponed until Q3. Current operations are acceptable risk. "You signed my family's death warrant," Amara whispered, her young voice carrying the weight of absolute judgment. "You looked at a report that said people would die if you didn't fix those problems, and you decided their lives weren't worth the cost." Daniel felt like he was drowning. The board, the shareholders, there were budget constraints. "Shut up." Amara exploded again. "Just shut up with your excuses. My brother was 6 years old. He didn't care about your budget constraints when he was choking on toxic fumes. Mama didn't care about your shareholders when she was burning alive trying to save him." She collapsed back onto the seat, sobbing so hard her entire body shook. "Marcus called my name when it happened. Did you know that? One of the survivors heard him. In all that chaos and fire and death, my baby brother's last word was Amara. He died calling for me, and I wasn't there because I was safe at school while you were murdering my family for money." The anguish in her voice was unbearable. Daniel tried to reach for her again, desperate to comfort her, but she slapped his hand away with vicious force. "I said don't touch me," she snarled. "You're not my father. You're just the sperm donor who happened to create me before he became a monster." The words cut Daniel deeper than any knife. "Amara, please, my real daddy died with Mama and Marcus," she continued, her voice breaking. "Michael Crawford, the man who adopted us when you abandoned us. The man who read us bedtime stories and taught Marcus how to ride a bike and held me when I had nightmares. He's the one who loved us. He's the one who died from a broken heart because he couldn't save his family from you." Daniel's world tilted off its axis. "Adopted? Mama met Michael when we were 2, Amara explained through her tears. "After you disappeared from our lives completely. Michael loved us like we were his own blood. He gave us his name, his heart, everything. And then you took him away from us too. The revelation hit Daniel like a physical blow. Not only had he killed his biological children's mother and brother, but he'd also destroyed the man who had stepped up to be the father Daniel had never been. So when you sit there and tell me you want to love me, Amara continued, her voice growing stronger with rage, remember that love isn't words. Love is Michael reading Goodnight Moon 47 times because Marcus was scared of the dark. Love is Mama working double shifts so we could have new school clothes. Love is what you destroyed. Daniel's phone suddenly buzzed with an urgent call. His assistant's panicked voice filled the car through the speaker. Mr. Crawford. Sir, we have a problem. The Williams family attorney is holding a press conference in 30 minutes. They're claiming to have evidence of criminal negligence, and Amara's eyes went wide. Williams? But that's not. I changed my name back. I wanted them to use our real name. Daniel ended the call with shaking hands. What are you talking about? The lawyer working with the other families, Amara said, her voice filled with sudden panic. I gave him some of the documents I stole from your office. I told him to file everything under Williams because I couldn't bear to use Crawford. Not after what you did to us. You're working with the attorneys suing me? Daniel's voice was deadly quiet. Amara lifted her chin defiantly. Of course I am. Someone has to make sure you pay for what you did. Someone has to make sure the whole world knows that Daniel Crawford is a murderer. The betrayal hit Daniel like a sledgehammer. This child, his daughter, hadn't come here seeking reconciliation. She'd come here to destroy him completely. You've been planning this, he said slowly, the pieces falling into place. Getting into my car, the emotional manipulation, telling me about Marcus, it was all a setup. It wasn't manipulation. Amar shot back. Everything I told you about Marcus was true. Every tear I've cried is real. But yes, I planned this. I've been planning it for months. She stood up again, her small frame somehow seeming larger, more threatening. You want to know what I've really been doing? I've been building a case against you. I've been collecting evidence, finding witnesses, gathering everything I need to make sure you lose everything, just like you took everything from me. Daniel felt his businessman instincts kicking in, overriding his newly awakened paternal feelings. This was war. This child might be his blood, but she was also his enemy. You have no idea what you're dealing with, he said, his voice returning to its familiar ice-cold tone. I have the best lawyers money can buy. I can tie up any case in court for years. I can make sure you and those other families never see a penny. Amara smiled, a chilling expression on such a young face. Maybe, but you can't stop the truth from coming out. And you can't stop me from telling the whole world that Daniel Crawford killed his own children. The threat hung between them like a loaded gun. You wouldn't, Daniel breathed. Watch me, Amara replied, pulling out a small recording device from her pocket. This entire conversation has been recorded. Everything you've admitted, everything you've said, it's all here. And in 25 minutes, it's going public. Daniel lunged for the device, but Amara was faster. She hit a button and the recording stopped, then immediately started uploading to a cloud server through her phone's connection. Too late, she said with grim satisfaction. It's already backing up to multiple servers. Even if you destroy this device, the truth is already out there. Father and daughter stared at each other across the back seat of the Maybach. Two warriors locked in a battle that would destroy one of them completely, and neither was willing to surrender. The silence that followed was deafening, broken only by the soft ping of Amara's phone as the recording finished uploading. Daniel stared at the device in his daughter's small hands like it was a ticking bomb, which, in many ways, it was. "You just destroyed both of us," Daniel said quietly, his voice carrying a deadly calm that made Amara's stomach clench with sudden uncertainty. "What do you mean?" Daniel's laugh was bitter. "You think you're so smart, little girl? You think you've planned for everything? When that recording goes public, when the world finds out that Daniel Crawford's own daughter orchestrated his downfall, what do you think happens to you?" Amara's confidence wavered for the first time. I'll be a hero. People will see that I brought justice for my family." "You'll be a target," Daniel corrected ruthlessly. "My enemies will use you as a weapon against me. My allies will see you as a threat to eliminate. The media will tear you apart. And every single person who loses money when my company crashes will blame a 9-year-old girl for their financial ruin." The car's air conditioning hummed, but Amara suddenly felt cold. She hadn't thought about the consequences beyond exposing Daniel's crimes. "You're lying," she whispered, but her voice lacked conviction. "Am I?" Daniel pulled out his phone and showed her the screen. 17 missed calls in the last 5 minutes. "My head of security, my legal team, my crisis management firm. They're already tracking the source of that upload. They already know it came from inside this car." As if summoned by his words, the car's intercom crackled to life. "Mr. Crawford, this is Reynolds," came the voice of his head of security. "We've detected a security breach. We have teams en route to your location. Please confirm your status." Amara's eyes went wide with sudden terror. "Teams?" Daniel's smile was cold as winter. "Corporate security doesn't mess around when a billion-dollar empire is under attack. They'll assume you're working with someone, industrial espionage, maybe terrorism. A little girl couldn't possibly orchestrate something this sophisticated alone." "But I did," Amara protested, panic creeping into her voice. "I planned everything myself. I'm not working with anyone." "Try explaining that to men with guns who are trained to neutralize threats to the company," Daniel replied. "Try convincing them that a child in foster care somehow outsmarted our entire security system." The underground garage suddenly erupted with the screech of tires and the slam of car doors. Through the Maybach-tinted windows, Amara could see black SUVs surrounding them, men in tactical gear pouring out like ants from a disturbed nest. "Oh God," she breathed, her small body beginning to tremble. "Oh God, what did I do?" "You started a war you can't win," Daniel said, but something in his voice had shifted. Seeing real fear in his daughter's eyes was affecting him more than he wanted to admit. Reynolds' voice crackled through the intercom again. "Mr. Crawford, we need you to exit the vehicle immediately. We have reports of a potential kidnapping situation." "Kidnapping?" Amara's voice cracked with terror. Daniel's jaw clenched. His security team had obviously detected an unauthorized person in his car and jumped to the worst possible conclusion. Standard protocol would be to assume Daniel was being held hostage and respond with overwhelming force. "Listen to me," Daniel said urgently, leaning toward Amara. "When they open that door, you stay behind me. You don't say anything about the recording, you don't mention the documents, you don't even breathe without my permission. Do you understand?" "Why would you protect me?" Amara asked, confusion mixing with her fear. "I just ruined your life." "Because you're 9 years old." Daniel snapped. "Because no matter what you've done, no matter how much you hate me, I'm not going to let my security team treat you like a terrorist." The car door suddenly exploded open, and Reynolds himself appeared, a massive man with cold eyes and a gun drawn, flanked by 4 other armed guards. "Step out of the vehicle, Mr. Crawford," Reynolds commanded. "Slowly. Keep your hands visible." Daniel moved to comply, but Amara suddenly grabbed his arm with both her small hands. "Don't leave me," she whispered, all her earlier bravado completely gone. "Please, I'm scared." The transformation was startling. Seconds ago she'd been a fierce warrior child bringing down her father's empire, and now she was just a head. "Mr. Crawford," Reynolds repeated, his voice harder now. "We need you to move away from the hostel." "Hostel?" Daniel's voice turned dangerous. "That's a child, Reynolds. A child who somehow bypassed 6 layers of security to infiltrate your vehicle and upload classified documents to external servers," Reynolds replied coldly. "Our tech team is tracking the breach now. This is clearly a sophisticated operation." Amara made a small whimpering sound, pressing closer to Daniel. "I didn't mean for this to happen," she whispered. "I just wanted to make you pay for what you did to Marcus. I didn't think about—" "Shut up," Daniel hissed quietly, but not unkindly. To Reynolds he said, "Stand down. All of you, lower your weapons immediately." "Sir, protocol requires—" "I don't care about protocol." Daniel's voice echoed through the garage. "That's my daughter." The words hung in the air like a bomb going off. Reynolds blinked. "Your daughter, sir?" "My biological daughter," Daniel confirmed, his arm moving protectively around Amara's shoulders. "Amara Crawford. And if any of you point a gun at her for one more second, you'll all be looking for new jobs." The security team exchanged confused glances. This wasn't in any of their protocols. "But sir," Reynolds said carefully, "the security breach was planned and executed by a 9-year-old with a smartphone and more determination than our entire IT department," Daniel said grimly. "Stand down. Now." Reluctantly, the guards lowered their weapons, but their stance remained tense, ready. "Daddy." Amara's voice was so small, so vulnerable, that it broke something inside Daniel's chest. "It's okay," he said softly, pulling her closer. "I won't let them hurt you. But the recording will probably destroy my company, ruin my reputation, and send me to prison," Daniel finished matter-of-factly. "But you're still my daughter. And despite everything you've done, everything I've done, that still means something." Amara looked up at him with wonder and confusion warring in her dark eyes. "I don't understand. I tried to destroy you." "You succeeded," Daniel replied with dark humor. "Congratulations. You're probably the most effective 9-year-old corporate saboteur in history." Despite everything, despite the chaos and fear and armed guards surrounding them, Amara let out a small, shocked giggle. "This isn't funny," she said, but she was still pressed against his side like she never wanted to let go. "No, it's not," Daniel agreed. "It's a disaster. But somehow, sitting here with you, knowing that you're my daughter, knowing that you cared enough about your brother to risk everything for justice, I don't think I've ever been prouder of anyone in my entire life." Reynolds cleared his throat. "Sir, what are your orders regarding the security breach?" Daniel looked down at Amara, this fierce, brilliant, absolutely devastating child who had just blown up his entire world, and made another decision that surprised him. "No charges," he said firmly. "No retaliation, no investigation, no punishment. Miss Crawford was exercising her right to seek justice for her family." "But sir, but nothing." Daniel's voice was steel. "Anyone who has a problem with that decision can explain it to my lawyers after I have them arrested for threatening a minor." Amara stared up at him in amazement. You're really protecting me? Even after what I did? Especially after what you did, Daniel replied. Someone should have stood up for Marcus a long time ago. I'm glad it was his sister. And in that moment, surrounded by chaos and consequences and the smoking ruins of everything he'd built, Daniel Crawford finally understood what love actually meant. Reynolds' radio crackled to life, breaking the tense moment. Base to Alpha Team. We have media converging on the building. Channel 7 News is setting up outside. They're asking about the Crawford Industries whistleblower leak. Daniel's blood turned to ice. How fast? Sir, the story broke 3 minutes ago. They're calling it the Crawford confession tapes. Every major network is picking it up. Amara's small hand flew to her mouth. Already? But I thought we'd have more time before. Before what? Daniel's voice was dangerously quiet. Before you had second thoughts? Before you realized you might have just painted a target on both our backs? The car's phone rang with an incoming call from Daniel's board of directors. Then another. Then another. Within seconds, it was a symphony of panic, lawyers, executives, crisis managers, all demanding answers to questions Daniel didn't have. Don't answer, Amara whispered urgently. Please don't answer. But having second thoughts about destroying your father. Daniel's voice was bitter, but Amara caught something else underneath, hurt. Real, deep hurt. Amara started, then stopped. Confusion written across her young features. Daniel's phone buzzed with a text message. Then another. The words that flashed across the screen made his face go white. Crawford's stock down 60%. Trading halted. Federal investigation announced. 60%, Daniel said quietly, staring at the screen. 40,000 employees, Amara. 40,000 people who depend on Crawford Industries for their paychecks, their health insurance, their children's college funds. You just cost them everything. Amara's eyes filled with tears. I didn't think about. No, you didn't think. Daniel exploded, his earlier protectiveness evaporating under the weight of catastrophe. You were so focused on your precious revenge that you never considered the collateral damage. Stop yelling at me. Amara screamed back, her own anger flaring. You killed my family. You don't get to lecture me about collateral damage. Your family? Daniel's laugh was harsh, cutting. Let me tell you about your real family. He yanked out his phone and pulled up a series of photos, pictures Amara had never seen before. A young woman with dark hair and bright eyes, standing next to a tall man with kind eyes and a gentle smile. That's your mother, Daniel said, his voice shaking with emotion. Lisa Martinez. Not Lisa Crawford. She lied about her name when she applied to work at my company. Amara stared at the photos, confusion and pain warring on her face. What are you talking about? Your mother was an industrial spy, Daniel continued ruthlessly. She was working for my biggest competitor, Meridian Corporation. She seduced me, got pregnant on purpose, and then disappeared when she realized I was too paranoid to give her access to the really valuable information. That's not true. Amara's voice cracked. Mama loved you. She told me. She told you what she needed you to believe to keep her cover story intact. Daniel pulled up more documents on his phone. Background checks, surveillance reports, bank records. Look at this. Payments from Meridian Corp to Lisa Martinez, starting 6 months before she met me and continuing until 2 weeks before you were born. Amara grabbed the phone with trembling hands, staring at the evidence. The dates, the amounts, the paper trail. It was all there, undeniable and devastating. She was paid $2 million to get close to me, Daniel said, his voice growing softer but no less cutting. The pregnancy wasn't planned, but when it happened, she saw an opportunity for an even bigger payday. She was going to use you and Marcus as leverage to get access to my company's secrets. No, Amara whispered, but her voice lacked conviction. Too many things suddenly made sense. Her mother's nervous reactions whenever Daniel's name came up, the way she'd always deflected questions about their relationship, the mysterious trust fund that had paid for their house. And Michael Crawford. Daniel continued relentlessly. The man you thought was your real father? He was Lisa's handler at Meridian Corporation. They got married as part of their deep cover operation. Everything you thought you knew about your family was a lie designed to steal my company's secrets. Amara was sobbing now, her small body shaking with the force of her tears. Stop. Please stop. But Daniel couldn't stop. The pain and betrayal were pouring out of him like poison from a wound. You want to know the really funny part? When Lisa realized she couldn't get what Meridian wanted, she tried to come back to me. 3 times. The last time was 2 days before the explosion. He pulled up a voicemail on his phone and hit play. Lisa's voice filled the car, older, more desperate than in Amara's memories. Daniel, please. I know you probably hate me, but I need to tell you the truth. About the twins, about why I really left. Meridian is threatening my family. They want me to sabotage your plant, 'cause an accident that will destroy your company and kill your stock price. I can't do it. I won't. But they're going to do it anyway, and I need to warn you. Please call me back. If not for me, then for Amara and Marcus. They're your children, and they deserve to know their real father before. The message cut off abruptly. Amara stared at the phone in horror. She tried to warn you? She tried to warn me, Daniel confirmed quietly. But I was too proud, too angry to return her calls. I deleted every message without listening to them. If I had just picked up the phone, Marcus would still be alive, Amara finished, the realization hitting her like a physical blow. All of them would still be alive, Daniel said. Lisa, Michael, Marcus, they all died because I was too stubborn to listen to a warning that could have saved them. The car fell silent except for Amara's quiet crying. Outside, they could hear the growing chaos, reporters arriving, police sirens, the general mayhem of a major scandal breaking. So you see, Daniel continued, his voice hollow, we're both responsible for their deaths. You with your naive crusade for justice based on lies your mother told you. And me, with my pride and my refusal to see the truth that was right in front of me. Amara looked up at him with red, swollen eyes. What truth? That your mother really did love me in the end, Daniel said softly. That she chose protecting us over her mission. That she died trying to save the family she'd betrayed. He reached out slowly and gently touched Amara's tear-stained cheek. And that despite everything, despite the lies, despite the betrayal, despite the fact that we've probably just destroyed each other, you're still the best thing that ever happened to me. Amara stared at him, her young mind struggling to process everything she'd learned. I don't understand anything anymore. Neither do I, Daniel admitted. But I know one thing for certain. What? I'm not losing you again. No matter what it costs me, no matter what we have to face, I'm not walking away from my daughter a second time. Reynolds' voice cut through the moment. Sir, we need to move. Federal agents are en route. They'll want to question both of you about the leaked documents. Daniel looked at Amara, this fierce, broken, beautiful child who had just turned both their worlds upside down. "Are you ready to face this together?" he asked quietly. Amara wiped her nose with the back of her hand and straightened her shoulders, a gesture so reminiscent of his own that it took his breath away. "Together," she said firmly, then added with a watery smile, "but I'm still really mad at you." "I'd be disappointed if you weren't," Daniel replied, pulling her close as the chaos of the outside world pressed in around them. They were about to face the storm they'd created together, and somehow, that felt like the first honest thing either of them had done in a very long time. The federal agents arrived like an invasion force, 12 black SUVs, tactical teams, and a woman in a crisp navy suit who looked like she could stare down the devil himself. Agent Sarah Chin of the FBI's Corporate Crimes Division stepped out of the lead vehicle, her dark hair pulled back in a severe bun, her expression unreadable behind designer glasses. "Daniel Crawford," she announced, her voice cutting through the chaos like a blade. "You're under arrest for criminal negligence, corporate manslaughter, and conspiracy to commit securities fraud." But as she approached the Maybach, she stopped short. Through the window, she could see Daniel Crawford, the man they'd been hunting for months, cradling a small black girl who was sobbing into his expensive suit jacket. "Sir," Reynolds said quietly to Agent Chin, "there are complications." "What kind of complications?" "The child. She's his daughter, and she's the one who provided the evidence against him." Agent Chen's perfectly composed expression cracked slightly. In 15 years of federal law enforcement, she'd never encountered anything quite like this. Inside the car, Amara suddenly pulled away from Daniel, her eyes wide with a new kind of terror. "They're going to arrest you?" "Yes," Daniel said simply. "And probably you too, once they realize you broke into federal databases to get some of those documents." "Federal databases?" Amara's voice was barely a whisper. Daniel's phone buzzed with yet another call. This time, it was his head of legal, Patricia Winters. He answered on speaker. "Daniel, where the hell are you?" Patricia's voice was razor-sharp with panic. "The Justice Department is calling this the biggest corporate crime story of the decade. They're talking about criminal charges, prison time. And there's something else." "What?" Daniel asked, though he wasn't sure he wanted to know. Meridian Corp just announced a hostile takeover bid. They're claiming Crawford Industries is too damaged to continue operations. They're offering to buy out our shareholders at 30 cents on the dollar. Daniel's blood ran cold. "They planned this." "What do you mean?" "Meridian," Daniel said slowly, the pieces falling into place. "They didn't just use Lisa as a spy 13 years ago. They've been playing the long game. They wanted me to fail, wanted my company destroyed. And they used my own daughter to do it." Amara's face went white. "What are you saying?" Daniel turned to her, his expression grim. "How did you know where to find those internal documents? How did you know exactly which databases to hack?" "I figured it out myself," Amara said, but her voice lacked confidence. "A 9-year-old figured out how to bypass corporate firewalls that cost me $50 million to install." Daniel's voice was getting harder. "A child in foster care somehow knew exactly which documents would cause maximum damage to my company?" Amara's hands began to shake. "I'm smart. I taught myself." "Who helped you, Amara?" Daniel's voice was deadly quiet. "Who gave you the access codes? Who taught you which files to steal?" "Nobody. I did it all myself." But even as she said it, Amara's mind was racing back over the past few months. The social worker who'd taken such a special interest in her case. Mr. Johnson, who'd always seemed to know so much about computers and had been so helpful when she'd expressed interest in learning about her father's business. The social worker who'd always asked such detailed questions about what she discovered, who'd encouraged her quest for justice, who'd given her the untraceable phone and taught her how to use encrypted servers. "Oh God," she breathed, the realization hitting her like a physical blow. "Mr. Johnson." Daniel's expression darkened. "Tell me about Mr. Johnson." "He's my caseworker. He's been helping me since Mama died. He said he wanted to help me get justice for my family." Amara's voice was getting smaller, more frightened. "He taught me about computers. He said I was so smart, so brave for wanting to hold you accountable." Daniel was already pulling up his phone, fingers flying over the screen. "Patricia, I need you to run a background check on someone. A social worker named Johnson, working with foster children in the state system." "Daniel, what? Just do it. Now." While they waited, Agent Chen approached the car again, her patience clearly wearing thin. "Mr. Crawford, I need you and the child to exit the vehicle immediately." But Daniel held up a hand, his phone ringing with Patricia's callback. "Daniel?" Patricia's voice was tight with shock. "There is no social worker named Johnson in the state system. But there is a James Johnson who works for Meridian Corp's Intelligence Division. Former CIA, specializes in psychological operations and corporate espionage." The bottom dropped out, whispered. "He's a spy," Daniel said grimly. "And you've been his weapon of choice." Amara doubled over like she'd been punched in the stomach. No. This can't be happening. Every piece of evidence you found, every document you stole, every move you made, it was all orchestrated by Meridian Corp, Daniel continued, his voice gentle despite the devastating words. "They've been using you to destroy me from the inside." "But the documents are real," Amara protested desperately. "The evidence of your crimes is real." "Yes," Daniel admitted. "The evidence is real. But how convenient that you found exactly the documents that would cause maximum damage at exactly the right time to trigger a hostile takeover." Agent Chen had heard enough. She yanked open the car door with authority that brooked no argument. "Both of you, now." But as Amara started to move, Daniel's phone rang one more time. The caller ID made his blood freeze. "James Johnson." "Answer it," Agent Chen ordered. "Put it on speaker." Daniel answered the call, his hand shaking slightly. "Hello, Daniel," came a smooth, cultured voice. "I think it's time we talked." "Johnson, you son of a... Now. Language. There's a child present." Johnson's voice was sickeningly pleasant. "Though I suppose congratulations are in order. You finally met your daughter. Bright girl. Very easy to manipulate when you appeal to her sense of justice." Amara made a small, broken sound. "What do you want?" Daniel asked through gritted teeth. "What I've always wanted. Your company. Your reputation. Your complete and utter destruction." Johnson's mask was slipping, revealing the venom underneath. Lisa was supposed to finish this 13 years ago, but she developed inconvenient feelings. Amazing how love can interfere with business, isn't it? "You killed her," Daniel realized. The explosion wasn't an accident. It wasn't even negligence. You murdered her. "She was going to expose our operation," Johnson said matter-of-factly. "She was going to warn you about the sabotage. Couldn't have that. So we accelerated our timeline. The explosion served multiple purposes, eliminated a liability, destroyed your plant, and created the perfect cover story for your eventual downfall. Agent Chen was frantically signaling to her tech team to trace the call. "And Amara?" Daniel asked, his voice barely controlled. A delightful bonus. Who better to destroy Daniel Crawford than his own daughter? The poetry of it is really quite beautiful. "I hate you," Amara whispered into the phone, tears streaming down her face. "I hate you so much." Now, sweetheart. You should be thanking me. I gave you the tools to avenge your family. I helped you become the instrument of justice you always wanted to be. You used me," Amara screamed. "You made me believe that he was the monster when you're the one who killed my family." "Your family died because they were in the way," Johnson replied coldly. "Just like you'll die if you don't continue to play your part in this little drama." The threat hung in the air like a poison cloud. "Are you threatening my daughter?" Daniel's voice was deadly quiet. "I'm simply pointing out that loose ends need to be tied up," Johnson said pleasantly. "And little Amara has served her purpose." Daniel looked at this brave, broken little girl who'd been manipulated by monsters, who'd been used as a weapon against her own father, who'd lost everything and everyone she'd ever loved, and something fundamental shifted inside him. "Johnson," Daniel said, his voice carrying a promise of absolute destruction, "you just made the biggest mistake of your life." "And what's that?" "You threatened my family." And with that, Daniel Crawford, billionaire, corporate titan, destroyer of companies, became something far more dangerous, that he became a father with nothing left to lose. The line went dead, leaving nothing but the sound of Amara's ragged breathing and the distant chaos of media crews setting up outside. Agent Chen was barking orders into her radio about tracing the call, but Daniel barely heard her. His entire focus was on his daughter, who looked like she was about to shatter into a million pieces. "I'm sorry," Amara whispered, her voice so broken it physically hurt to hear. "Daddy, I'm so sorry. I didn't know. I thought I was doing the right thing." "You were," Daniel said fiercely, pulling her close. "You were trying to get justice for your family. That's exactly what you should have done." "But I destroyed everything." Amara sobbed. "Your company, your life, everything. And it was all a lie." Agent Chen stepped closer, her expression softening slightly at the sight of a child in such obvious distress. "Mr. Crawford, we need to move this conversation to a secure location. If this Johnson character is threatening your daughter..." Her words were cut off by the screech of tires as 3 black motorcycles roared into the garage, their riders wearing dark helmets and moving with military precision. Before anyone could react, smoke grenades exploded around the Maybach, filling the space with thick, choking fog. "Down!" Reynolds shouted, drawing his weapon, but the tactical teams were already moving, surrounding Daniel and Amara with a protective circle. Through the chaos, Daniel heard Amara scream, not in fear, but in rage. "I'm not running anymore." She broke free from his protective embrace and stood up in the backseat of the car, her small frame silhouetted against the swirling smoke like an avenging angel. "Johnson," she screamed at the top of her lungs. "I know you're listening. I know you can hear me." "Amara, get down." Daniel tried to pull her back, but she twisted away with surprising strength. "I'm done being your puppet," she continued screaming. "I'm done being scared. You want to hurt me? Then come and try." The motorcycles had stopped just outside the smoke cloud, their engines idling menacingly. Agent Chen was coordinating with building security, trying to establish a perimeter, but everyone knew they were sitting ducks in the underground garage. Amat, please, Daniel begged, standing up beside her. This isn't the time for what? For being brave? For standing up to the monsters. Amara's eyes blazed with a fury that was both terrifying and magnificent. They killed my family. They used me to hurt you. They turned me into a weapon against my own father. Her voice cracked on the last word, but she didn't back down. And now they think they can just eliminate me like I'm some kind of problem to be solved? Well, I've got news for them. One of the motorcycles revved its engine and started moving toward them through the smoke. Daniel's protective instincts kicked into overdrive. He grabbed Amara and threw himself over her just as the garage erupted in gunfire, but instead of bullets, the motorcycle riders were firing something else. Tranquilizer darts meant to incapacitate, not kill. They want us alive, Daniel realized with growing horror. They're not here to eliminate witnesses. They're here to collect assets. Agent Chen's voice cut through the chaos. All units, suspects are attempting to kidnap federal witnesses. Use of deadly force is authorized. But the smoke was too thick, the situation too chaotic. The federal agents couldn't get a clear shot without risking hitting Daniel or Amara. One of the dart guns fired again, this time finding its mark in Reynolds' shoulder. The big security chief went down hard, his weapon clattering across the concrete floor. "Daddy!" Amara screamed as another motorcycle circled around toward them. Daniel looked around desperately for an escape route, but they were trapped. The garage had only one exit, and the motorcycles controlled it. The federal agents were pinned down by the smoke and their own rules of engagement. That's when Amara did something that surprised everyone. She reached into Daniel's jacket pocket and pulled out his phone, her small fingers flying across the screen with practiced precision. "What are you doing?" Daniel asked. "Fighting back," Amara replied grimly. "Mr. Johnson taught me a lot about computers. Time to see if I was paying attention to the right lessons." She was hacking into Crawford Industries' security system, using Daniel's executive access codes to trigger every alarm, every lockdown protocol, every emergency system in the building. "Amara, that won't. I'm not trying to stop them," she interrupted, still typing furiously. "I'm trying to record them. Every camera in this building is now streaming live to 12 different news outlets and uploading to cloud servers all over the world." The implications hit Daniel like a thunderbolt. "You're exposing their operation. I'm making sure that if they kill us, the whole world will see exactly who did it and why," Amara confirmed, her young voice steady with deadly determination. One of the motorcycles suddenly stopped, and Daniel could hear the riders speaking into a radio headset, obviously receiving new orders. Through the smoke, Johnson's voice echoed from speakers built into the motorcycles. "Very clever, little one. But you're only delaying the inevitable." "Maybe," Amara called back, "but I'm done being your victim. And I'm done letting you hurt my father." The word father hit Daniel like a physical blow. Despite everything, despite the pain, the betrayal, the chaos, she was claiming him, protecting him. "You have 30 seconds to surrender," Johnson's voice continued, "or we start eliminating federal agents until you comply." Agent Chen's voice crackled over her radio. "Negative. We do not negotiate with terrorists." "Then you've chosen poorly," Johnson replied. One of the motorcycles turned toward the cluster of federal agents, its rider raising what looked like a military-grade weapon. That's when Daniel Crawford made the most important decision of his life. He stood up, stepped in front of his daughter, and faced down the motorcycles with nothing but his bare hands and a father's love. "Stop!" he shouted, his voice echoing through the garage. "You want Crawford Industries? You want my company? It's yours. Just let my daughter go. Daddy, no. Amara protested, trying to pull him back down. I'll sign over everything, Daniel continued, ignoring her protests. Every asset, every patent, every subsidiary. Meridian Corp can have it all. Just leave Amara alone. Johnson's laughter echoed through the speakers, cold and mocking. Oh, Daniel, you still don't understand. This was never about your company. What? This was about destroying you. Completely. And the most beautiful part is that your own daughter was the instrument of your destruction. The smoke was beginning to clear, and Daniel could see the motorcycle riders more clearly now. They were professionals, military contractors, probably former special forces. Even if you give me everything, Johnson continued, even if you surrender completely, I'll still kill her. Because she knows too much. Because she's seen behind the curtain. And because watching you lose her will be the perfect finishing touch to your destruction. Daniel felt something crack inside his chest. Not his heart this time, but something harder, colder. The businessman, the negotiator, the man who always looked for win-win solutions. That man died in the smoke-filled garage. What emerged was something far more dangerous. A father who had found his child and would burn down the world rather than lose her again. You know what, Johnson? Daniel said quietly, his voice carrying a promise that made even the motorcycle riders hesitate. I've changed my mind. He turned to Amara, who was staring up at him with wide, frightened eyes. Baby girl, he said gently, how would you like to help Daddy destroy some really bad people? Amara's expression shifted from fear to something that looked remarkably like her father's predatory smile. What did you have in mind? She asked. Daniel's grin was sharp enough to cut glass. How about we show them what happens when you mess with the Crawford family? The moment of truth had arrived, and it was eerily quiet in the smoke-filled garage. Daniel and Amara stood together in the back seat of the Maybach, father and daughter united for the first time, facing down an enemy that had destroyed their family and manipulated them both. Amara, Daniel said quietly, his voice steady despite the chaos around them, you to access the Crawford Industries emergency broadcast system. Can you do that? Yes, she replied, her small fingers already moving across his phone. But what are you planning? Something your mother would have been proud of, Daniel said, his eyes never leaving the motorcycle riders who were repositioning themselves for another assault. We're going to tell the truth. Agent Chen's voice crackled through her radio. All units, be advised, we have incoming federal reinforcements, ETA 4 minutes. We don't have 4 minutes, Daniel muttered, then raised his voice. Johnson, I have a proposition for you. The garage fell silent except for the idle of motorcycle engines. I'm listening, Johnson's voice echoed from the speakers. You want to destroy me? You want to watch me lose everything? Daniel's voice grew stronger, more confident. Then let's do this properly. Man to man. No hired guns, no innocent federal agents caught in the crossfire. Just you and me. Daddy, no. Amara grabbed his arm. He'll kill you. Maybe, Daniel admitted quietly to her, then louder, what's the matter, Johnson? Afraid to face me without your army of mercenaries? Johnson's laughter was cold. You think this is some kind of movie, Daniel? Some dramatic final confrontation? I think you're a coward who hides behind children and hired killers, Daniel replied, his voice carrying across the garage like a challenge. I think you're so pathetic that you had to manipulate a 9-year-old girl to do your dirty work because you couldn't face me yourself. The silence that followed was electric with tension. But I'll tell you what, Daniel continued, pulling Amara closer to him. If you're brave enough to come down here and face me in person, I'll make you a deal. You win, you get everything. My company, my assets, and my daughter. I win, you surrender yourself to Agent Chin and confess to everything. And what makes you think I'd honor that deal? Johnson asked. Because, Daniel said, his voice dropping to a deadly whisper, we're broadcasting this entire conversation live to every major news network in the country. Thanks to my brilliant daughter here, the whole world is watching. You can't just murder us and walk away anymore. Amara looked up at her father in amazement. While she'd been focused on hacking the security system, he'd been thinking 3 steps ahead, turning her defensive move into an offensive weapon. The whole world now knows who you are, what you've done, and what you're threatening to do, Daniel continued. Your only way out is to make this look legitimate. A fair fight. Winner takes all. Agent Chen was frantically trying to interrupt, but Daniel held up a hand to silence her. So what's it going to be, Johnson? Are you going to prove you're the better man, or are you going to confirm that you're nothing but a coward who targets children? The motorcycle engines revved angrily, and Daniel could sense the riders getting restless, waiting for orders. Finally, Johnson's voice came through the speakers again. You have no idea what you're asking for, Daniel. I've killed men with my bare hands. I'm trained in 17 different forms of combat. You're a desk jockey who hasn't thrown a punch since college. Then it should be easy for you, Daniel replied evenly. Amara tugged on his sleeve. Daddy, this is crazy. You don't have to do this. Daniel knelt down so he was eye level with his daughter, his hands gently framing her face. Baby girl, do you remember what you told me about Marcus? About how he tried to protect your mama even when he was scared? Amara nodded, tears beginning to form in her eyes. Sometimes, Daniel said softly, being brave doesn't mean not being scared. It means doing the right thing even when you are scared. And right now, the right thing is making sure that the man who hurt our family can never hurt anyone else ever again. But what if you lose? Amara whispered that Daniel's smile was gentle and sad and absolutely certain. Then you run. You take Agent Chin and you run as far and as fast as you can. And you remember that your daddy loved you enough to try. I don't want to lose you again, Amara said, throwing her arms around his neck. I just found you. You're not going to lose me, Daniel promised, holding her tight. I'm not going anywhere. Not ever again. Agent Chen had heard enough. Mr. Crawford, I cannot and will not allow you to engage in single combat with a known terrorist. This is not the Old West. No, Daniel agreed, standing up and helping Amara down from the car. It's not. But it is justice. And sometimes justice requires someone to take a stand. One of the motorcycles suddenly roared to life and started moving toward them. But instead of attacking, the rider stopped about 20 feet away and removed his helmet. The man who emerged was tall, lean, and moved with the fluid grace of a predator. His hair was silver, his face lined but still handsome, and his eyes were the coldest thing Amara had ever seen. James Johnson, Daniel said, his voice steady. Daniel Crawford, Johnson replied with a mocking smile. And the lovely Amara. You know, child, you really were an exceptional asset. Such passion, such determination. You almost remind me of your mother. Don't you dare talk about my mama, Amara said fiercely, stepping slightly in front of Daniel in a protective gesture that broke his heart. Ah, but I knew Lisa quite well, Johnson continued, obviously enjoying the pain his words caused. She was beautiful, intelligent, and ultimately weak. Just like you'll be when you watch your father die. Enough, Daniel said, stepping forward. Let's finish this. Johnson reached into his jacket and pulled out a wicked-looking combat knife. I was hoping you'd say that. But before either man could move, Amara did something that shocked everyone in the garage. She stepped between them. No, she said firmly, her young voice carrying an authority that stopped both men in their tracks. This is wrong. Amara, get back, Daniel started. No, she shouted, whirling to face him. This is exactly what he wants. Don't you see? He wants us to fight each other, to hurt each other, to destroy each other. That's what he's always wanted. She turned to Johnson, her dark eyes blazing with fury. And you think you're so smart, manipulating everyone, pulling all the strings. But you made one big mistake. And what's that, little girl? Amara's smile was pure Crawford, sharp, intelligent, and absolutely devastating. You taught me how to hack into secure systems, she said sweetly. Including yours. Johnson's confident expression flickered. What are you talking about? While you've been monologuing like a cartoon villain, Amara replied, holding up Daniel's phone. I've been busy. Uploading every file from your personal servers to the FBI's database. Every operation, every assassination, every illegal activity Meridian Corp has ever been involved in. The garage fell absolutely silent. All 847 gigabytes of it, Amara continued cheerfully. Including the audio recordings of you ordering the murder of my family. Johnson's face went white. That's impossible. Those files are encrypted, with the same encryption you taught me to break when I was stealing files from my daddy's company, Amara finished. Funny how that works, isn't it? Agent Chen was already on her radio, confirming the data upload, and Daniel could see the exact moment when Johnson realized he'd been completely outmaneuvered by a 9-year-old girl. You brilliant, magnificent little genius, Daniel said, scooping Amara up in his arms and spinning her around. Did I do good, Daddy? Amara asked, grinning up at him. You did perfect, baby girl, Daniel replied, his heart swelling with pride and love and wonder at this incredible child who was his daughter. Johnson's roar of rage echoed through the garage as federal agents swarmed the remaining motorcycle riders and Agent Chen moved to place him under arrest, but Daniel and Amara barely noticed. They were too busy holding each other, finally safe, finally together, finally home. 3 months later, the morning sun streamed through the floor-to-ceiling windows of Daniel's penthouse office, though it looked nothing like it had before. Gone were the cold steel and glass furnishings, the intimidating corporate power displays, the sterile perfection that had once defined his world. In their place were splashes of color that could only come from a 9-year-old's influence, crayon drawings taped to the walls, a reading corner with bright cushions and children's books, and a massive aquarium where Amara's pet goldfish, Mr. Chompers Jr., named after Marcus's beloved dinosaur, swam in lazy circles. Daniel sat at his desk, now adorned, with family photos and Amara's latest art project, reviewing the final settlement documents for the families affected by the plant explosion. Every victim's family would receive full compensation, plus funds for education, healthcare, and grief counseling. It would cost Crawford Industries nearly $2 billion, but Daniel had never signed anything with greater satisfaction. Daddy! Amara's voice called from the reading corner, where she was sprawled on her stomach with homework spread around her like a colorful carpet. Yes, sweetheart. Mrs. Patterson wants to know if you can come to career day next week. I told her my daddy used to be a mean businessman, but now he's a good one who helps people. Daniel laughed, the sound rich and genuine in a way it never had been before. I think I can manage that. What should I tell them I do? Tell them you're a daddy who happens to run a company, Amara said seriously, not looking up from her math worksheet. Because that's the most important job you have. The words hit Daniel right in the heart, just like they did every time Amara casually demonstrated how completely she'd transformed his understanding of what mattered in life. His assistant's voice came through the intercom. Mr. Crawford, Agent Chen is here to see you. Send her in, Daniel replied, then called to Amara. Baby girl, Agent Chen is here. Amara immediately abandoned her homework and ran to the door, throwing it open with the enthusiasm of a child greeting a favorite aunt. Aunt Sarah, she called, launching herself into Agent Chen's arms. Agent Chen, who had somehow transformed from a stern federal investigator into an honorary family member over the past 3 months, caught Amara in a warm hug. How's my favorite computer genius? Chen asked, ruffling Amara's hair. I'm learning Python programming. Amara announced proudly. Daddy hired a teacher to come to the house twice a week. She says I'm a natural. I'm sure you are, Chen replied, then looked at Daniel with a mixture of amusement and concern. Though I hope you're teaching her to use her powers for good. Always, Daniel assured her, standing to greet Chen properly. What brings you by? Please tell me Johnson hasn't found some loophole in his confession. Chen's expression grew serious. Actually, that's exactly why I'm here. But it's good news. She pulled a thick folder from her briefcase and set it on Daniel's desk. Johnson's plea bargain was finalized this morning. Life in federal prison, no possibility of parole. And thanks to the evidence Amara provided, we've been able to dismantle Meridian Corp's entire intelligence operation. 47 arrests across 6 countries. What about the other families? Daniel asked. The ones Johnson hurt in his other operations? Full restitution is being arranged through asset forfeiture, Chen replied. Johnson's personal fortune, Meridian Corp's liquid assets, even his art collection, everything is being liquidated to compensate his victims. Amara had been listening intently from her perch on the arm of Daniel's chair. Does this mean it's really over? The bad guys can't hurt us anymore. Chen knelt down to Amara's eye level, her expression gentle but serious. The specific bad guys who hurt your family are never getting out of prison, sweetheart. You and your daddy are safe. What would you want to do first if you were in Amara's shoes? Share your thoughts on this incredible journey to healing. Good, Amara said with satisfaction. Because I have plans that don't include being scared of stupid men in motorcycles. What kind of plans? Chen asked, smiling. Amara's eyes lit up with excitement. Daddy and I are starting a foundation. The Marcus Crawford Foundation for Kids Who Need Families. We're going to help other kids in foster care find homes, and we're going to make sure they have computers and books and everything they need to be successful. That sounds wonderful, Chen said, looking at Daniel with approval. And very appropriate. Amara came up with the idea, Daniel said, his voice thick with pride. She said Marcus would want other kids to have the chances he never got. Plus, Amara added with the practical wisdom that never failed to amaze the adults around her, if we help kids learn about computers and business and stuff, maybe they can grow up to catch bad guys like Johnson before they hurt people. Chen laughed. You know, I might have some suggestions for your foundation's cybersecurity curriculum. Really? Amara bounced excitedly. Could you teach me more about being an FBI agent? Daddy says I have to wait until I'm older to officially apply, but maybe I could be a junior consultant or something. Amara, Daniel said gently, Agent Chen has a very important job that doesn't include babysitting overeager 9-year-olds. Actually, Chen said thoughtfully, the Bureau has been developing some new programs for gifted children interested in cybersecurity and digital forensics. Nothing dangerous, just educational workshops and summer camps. Amara might be exactly the kind of candidate we're looking for. Amara's squeal of delight could probably be heard 3 floors down. Can I, Daddy? Please? I promise I'll still do all my regular school work and my piano lessons and everything. Daniel looked at his daughter's hopeful face and felt his heart melt all over again. How could he deny her anything when she looked at him like that? We'll see, he said, which they both knew meant yes. Chen gathered her things and prepared to leave, but paused at the door. Daniel, can I ask you something personal? Of course. Do you ever regret it? Everything that happened, all the chaos and pain that led to this moment. Daniel looked around his transformed office, at the pictures of him and Amara at the zoo, at the beach, at her school play where she'd insisted he sit in the front row. He looked at his daughter, who was already back to her homework but stealing glances at him every few seconds as if she still couldn't quite believe he was real and staying. You know what I regret? Daniel said quietly. I regret that it took a tragedy to wake me up. I regret that Marcus died without ever knowing he had a father who would have loved him desperately. I regret that Lisa died thinking I didn't care enough to return her calls. He paused, watching Amara carefully color inside the lines of a picture she was making for his office wall. But do I regret that all of this led me to Amara? Do I regret finally understanding what love actually means? Daniel shook his head. Never. Not for a single second. After Chen left, Daniel and Amara worked together in comfortable silence. He on his business documents, she on her homework. The afternoon sun shifted across the office, casting warm golden light on this peaceful domestic scene that Daniel had never imagined possible. Daddy, Amara said eventually, not looking up from her science worksheet. Yes, baby girl? Do you think Mama and Marcus and Daddy Michael can see us now? Do you think they know we found each other? Daniel's throat tightened with emotion. Even after 3 months, Amara's capacity for love and forgiveness continued to humble him. I think, he said carefully, that wherever they are, they're very proud of you, and very happy that we're taking care of each other. Amara nodded solemnly, then brightened. I think so too. And I think Marcus would really like Mr. Chompers Jr. They both love dinosaurs. I'm sure they would be best friends. Daniel agreed as the day wound down. They packed up their things and prepared to head home, not to Daniel's sterile mansion, but to the warm, lived-in house they'd bought together in a neighborhood with good schools and other families. A house with a yard where Amara could play, and a kitchen, where they cooked dinner together every night, and a living room where they watched movies and did puzzles and talked about everything and nothing. Walking to the elevator, Amara slipped her small hand into Daniel's larger one, the gesture as natural as breathing now. Daddy. Yes, sweetheart. I love you. The words still hit him like a miracle every time she said them. Daniel squeezed her hand gently and smiled down at this extraordinary little girl who had saved his soul. I love you too, Amar. More than all the stars in the sky. And all the fish in the ocean. And all the fish in the ocean. And all the dinosaurs that ever lived. And all the dinosaurs that ever lived. Amara giggled, satisfied with their familiar ritual, and together they walked into the elevator that would take them home. Behind them, the Crawford Industries logo gleamed on the wall, still powerful, still successful, but now serving a purpose far greater than profit. It was serving love. It was serving family. It was serving the memory of a little boy who had wanted to be a firefighter and a woman who had died trying to save him, and in the end, that made all the difference as the elevator doors closed on the father and daughter who had found each other through tragedy and chosen each other through love. The late afternoon sun painted everything golden, like a promise that some stories, even the ones that begin with heartbreak, can still end with hope. The chaos was over. The conflict had ended. The pain had healed into something beautiful, and love, unexpected, transformative, redemptive love, had finally come home. Thank you for watching this story to the end. If you enjoyed this story, you will surely love the next. Click on the image or video showing on your screen right now to watch the next one.